CinemaCon 2025 recently wrapped, and of course the highlight of that event, for me at least, was the extended footage that was shown for Avatar: Fire and Ash. Not only did they show some clips of the movie, but they also showed a sizzle reel, which I did discuss in a previous video, but there's even been more information discussed about this footage, and I want to try and connect it with some of the concept art, theorizing in a sense what exactly is happening. Avatar Theory here, hope you're doing well and having a fantastic day, and do note that what I'm about to discuss is mostly theorizing and speculation, but there's also potential spoilers for the movie based on previous leaks from a script, especially around Spider and Kiri. Now recently Gizmodo.com also broke down the footage that was shown at CinemaCon, bringing us some new details, and like I said, I would like to try and connect that to some of the concept art that we've received in the past. The article does start by talking about Cameron that wasn't there in person, and also about what Zoe Saldana said, but I will leave that to the end of the video as I want to focus on the content itself. Now the article states that the Wind Traders show up and all of the Metkayina are excited. It's friendly, people are cheering, and some of the younger characters like Kiri and even Spider are riding with them. Looking at the art, I do feel that it is this one right here where you can see the Metkayina, and as I speculated before, the Wind Traders arrive at the Metkayina to essentially pick up the Sullys and return them to the Metkayina in the forest. You can see here that the Metkayina is at the bottom looking all cheerful, waving at the Wind Traders, and we also have this art piece right here, which based on the information we know right now, could be later in the day. I mean, the previous one could be early in the morning where they arrive at the Metkayina, whereas this one could be them leaving later in the day, but some of the descriptions that I've read also talks about the Ash Clan, the Manquang, attacking the Wind Traders on red flying creatures. And if you look there right in the center, although it does look more like an Ikran, you do have some reddish color in there, so I do wonder if this is the beginning of the attack. I'm leaning more into the speculation of this is the Wind Traders leaving the Metkayina later in the day or maybe the next day, but this could also be the start of the attack. Now going back to the article from Gizmodo, they talk about these jellyfish-like ships, saying they're basically flying pirate ships with sails made up of almost translucent material. Members of the tribe then bark out orders around the ship like you'd see in an old pirate movie, but the ships just keep gliding along. This is peaceful, this is beautiful, this is nice. Those were the exact words from Gizmodo, and again, I do think this is this scene right here, which is peaceful, beautiful, relaxing, and you don't really expect anything bad to happen. The article continues by describing the ships slowly floating through the mountains with some other Navi like Neytiri riding alongside on her Ikran. Spider playfully dangles his foot off the side. Again, everything is quiet and calm. I do feel that it is this art piece right here where they fly through the forest, everything again being beautiful, calm, and although we don't see an Ikran in this art concept, maybe here is where we see Neytiri flying on her Ikran. But again, all of this adding up to my theory a while back, where the Wind Traders come to the Metkayina, pick up the Sullys, leave during the day, and go back to the Metkayina forest. The article then describes Neytiri spotting something, watching them from the sky, and screams for Jake. It's the Ash tribe, and they have a much more menacing presence than the Navi people we know, thanks in large part to the bright red war paint they wear and the sparks coming off the back of their Ikrans. So this confirms that the Ash clan also has Ikrans. I mean, we do know that based on this art concept where we see VARANG and Quaritch at the Ash village. We saw some Ikrans at the top, and I'm guessing when the article talks about the sparks, it's probably the colors. And Neytiri spotting something likely relates to this concept piece, because if you look at the background, you can see the floating mountains, so it kinda adds up. The article then continues, stating that the Ash tribe swoops down and attacks our heroes in a massive mid-air battle. Jake fires his gun, Neytiri fires her bow and arrow, but the Ash tribe shoots arrows with fire, which starts to burn down the Wind tribe's ships. This is something I was wondering a while ago, because you have this big jellyfish-like floating structures, what a fire arrow would do to them. And this kind of confirms that an arrow with fire burned down the Wind tribe's ships like nothing, so they seem to be very vulnerable to fire. And I do think that this image with all of the Ash people is the one where they begin the attack on Jake and Neytiri. In one of the previous articles that I spoke about, it mentions that Quaritch teamed up with VARANG, and although we got this concept art from Empire magazine, when the article actually released, we had this one, and the big change was of course Quaritch at the bottom right, as one of the articles also talks about Quaritch having the Ash clan's war paint with his military outfit, and it adds up to this image, which was probably a spoiler, hence why they changed it quickly to this one right here. As the article from Gizmodo continues, they talk about Jake trekking across Pandora by himself, walking by massive volcanoes, and eventually arriving at what looks like the gate of the Ash tribe with his hands in the air, giving himself up. Now that is an interesting statement, because some of the other description talks about a character walking alongside a volcano, and they don't describe the character. So initially I thought it might be this one right here, where you see Quaritch being tied by the Ash people, being taken to VARANG. Maybe Gizmodo got it slightly wrong and it's not Jake giving himself up, it's actually Quaritch. Again, just speculating. I haven't seen the footage myself, but I mean, it kind of makes sense if Quaritch goes to the Ash people, gives himself up, puts his hands in the air to surrender himself because he wants to team up with the Ash people to fight against Jake. Something I've also mentioned previously, because we know that Quaritch lost a sea dragon in the Way of Water, so why would the RDA help him again in his personal vendetta against Jake? The RDA has bigger battles to face, so Quaritch might have gone to the RDA and the RDA might have said like, no, we're not going to help you again this time. You lost the battle, you lost as a sea dragon. This personal feud between Jake is between you and Jake, so you're on your own. That's why he goes to the Ash clan. And looking at the description, it makes sense if you just replace Jake with Quaritch. If the article read that Quaritch was walking by a massive volcano, eventually arriving at what looks like the gate of the Ash tribe with his hands in the air, giving himself up. That makes sense, again, if you look at this concept art. The article then describes Jake and Neytiri having problems with Loak, saying, quote, "You can't live in hate," end quote. That's obviously because of the death of Neteyam and the hate they have for the humans. The footage then switched to Tonowari, where he says that they can't defeat enemies that come from the stars, likely referring to the RDA, because we know the RDA is going to be much more menacing in Fire and Ash than they were in the Way of Water. The article also describes the Ash tribe teaming up with Quaritch and the rest of the human army, which is an interesting statement because I always speculated that it's going to be the RDA versus the Ash tribe versus Jake and Neytiri. So it'll be really interesting to see if and how the RDA is going to team up with the Ash clan, because we know the RDA essentially hates all Na'vi. Thus, I do wonder if they're going to betray the Ash clan if they are teaming up with them throughout the movie. The article then concludes stating that Neytiri is in the hospital and screams for her children while a raid is happening. So something bad is going to happen to Neytiri. I highly doubt that she's going to die, but she's going to get heavily injured, probably because of VARANG. And the article also describes a quick shot of the eye of a Tulkun, most likely Payakan, and that things end with a massive battle that's happening on what looks like floating rocks. They seem to be in the middle of some kind of floating wreckage from a battle that's still happening. Neytiri and the leader of the Ash tribe, who they've seen throughout the trailer, are fighting, but Neytiri's snarls come up against her flamethrower type weapon. I do wonder what flamethrower type weapon VARANG will have, and what battle is happening, and what exactly this floating wreckage from a battle is. Maybe it's the floating wreckage of the factory ship, but the footage ends in VARANG telling Neytiri, quote, "Your goddess has no dominion here," end quote, confirming that the Ash people do not believe in Eywa and is completely disconnected, making them truly a unique clan in the Avatar franchise. I do wonder though if one of my theories will come true, that being the Ash clan having cut off their Kurus to be completely disconnected from Eywa and also show loyalty to VARANG, because some of the concept art hinted to that, but there's no confirmation to confirm that theory. In addition to all of this, I also want to add that some of the description talks about Spider that has a broken mask, and that adds to the leaked script that we received a while ago, talking about Spider's mask being broken and that Kiri has to do something big in order to save him, thus essentially using her powers to make Spider a human Na'vi hybrid, enabling him to breathe on Pandora. This aligns with the art that we saw from an exhibition that shows Spider having some sort of Kuru, and it also adds to the poster of Spider we received for The Way of Water, which actually shows Spider being much older and having a scar that he received from Neytiri at the end of The Way of Water, indicating that this is likely Spider from Avatar Fire and Ash, and you can clearly see at the back of his head he has what looks to be a Kuru, again making him some sort of human Na'vi hybrid thanks to Kiri. And also, if you just zoom out and look at the poster as a whole, he is standing in Pandora without a breathing mask, so the scene they saw where Spider's mask is broken, where he falls down some sort of cliff, is likely where this will happen and where Kiri will save him, thus making him truly a unique character to the movie. But as of right now, that is all the information we have from the footage of CinemaCon. I will of course keep you updated if more information is revealed, and hopefully we will get a teaser or some sort of snippet or at least a movie still sooner rather than later. But as of right now, we don't know an exact date on when we will see the first teaser to Avatar Fire and Ash. Now, as for James Cameron not being at CinemaCon, he was still working on Avatar Fire and Ash, so he was still on location and unable to attend the event, but Zoe Saldana was there and did talk a little bit about the movie, stating that Fire and Ash is unlike anything the audiences has ever seen, but it is exactly what the audience wants. She says that Fire and Ash expands Pandora by introducing two new clans, that of course being the Ash clan and the Wind Traders. And then she just concludes by describing the Wind Traders as a peaceful nomadic clan and saying that the Ash clan has forsaken Eywa and is former Na'vi. Now, very interesting choice of words saying former Na'vi, again adding to the theory that they cut off their Kurus, that they're former Na'vi. But she then proceeds to introduce the footage, which of course was not shown, at least publicly. But that is everything we know so far. But let me know in the comments what has you most excited about this footage that was revealed, and what is your theories based on everything we know so far about Avatar Fire and Ash. For more Avatar content, have a look at the rest of my channel, and until next time, have a fantastic day and stay safe.